In the spring of 1981, at a farm auction outside Crowley, Louisiana, Clara Mercer paid $75 for 240 ducks nobody wanted. They were old laying birds from a failed egg operation. Their feathers were dull, their feet were rough. Most had stopped producing enough eggs to justify the feed they ate. The auctioneer tried $150, nothing. He dropped to $100, still nothing. Then $75. Clara raised her hand. A man beside the loading ramp laughed. Planning to open a duck retirement home, Clara looked at the crowded crates, then passed them toward the flat rice country beyond the road. "No," she said. "I bought them to weed a field." The laughter got louder. But Clara was not joking. She had already spent 6 months designing the job. And those worn-out ducks were the last part of a system that would keep her farm alive when better-equipped farms around her began to disappear. To understand why she saw labor where everyone else saw loss, you have to understand the rule her father gave her. Clara grew up on a small rice and crawfish place near Abbeville. Her father, Jonah Boudreau, had little schooling and no patience for waste. He fixed gates with wire saved from feed sacks. He fed kitchen scraps to hogs. He let cattle graze levees after the rice came off. He composted what would not feed anything. Whenever Clara carried something toward the burn pile, Jonah asked the same question. "What is the next use?" If she said there was none, he would shake his head. "A straight line spends money," he told her. "A circle keeps it." Clara heard that sentence so often that by the time she was 12, she could say it before he did. At first, she thought it was only about scraps. Later, she understood it was about the whole farm. Seed became rice. Rice left straw. Straw became bedding. Bedding became manure. Manure returned to the soil. A thing was not useful because it did one job well. It was useful because it kept another part of the farm from needing to be purchased. In 1971, Clara and her husband, Samuel, bought 58 acres west of Crowley. 32 acres were set up for rice. The rest held a small house, a machinery shed, 2 shallow ponds, and a line of live oaks along the North Road. Samuel liked equipment. He believed a farm could solve almost any problem, if the machine was big enough and the note was long enough. They bought a used combine, then a newer pump, then a spray rig, then a tractor with more horsepower than their acreage required. For several years, the system worked. Rice prices were steady enough. Diesel was manageable. Fertilizer did not feel like a threat. When weeds came, Samuel sprayed. When insects appeared, he sprayed again. When the field needed nitrogen, a truck delivered it. The farm produced. It also consumed. Every season began with invoices. Every harvest ended with Clara at the kitchen table, subtracting what the crop had cost before she could call any of it income. Then Samuel died in 1978. A blood clot reached his lungs 2 days after he injured his leg repairing the combine. He was 51. By the end of that week, Clara owned the farm alone. She also owned the pump payment, the tractor payment, the repair bill, the chemical account, and a crop that did not care who had been buried. Her 2 sons had jobs in Baton Rouge. They offered to come home. Clara told them not to. She could run the equipment. She could flood the fields. She could cut rice. Labor was not the problem. The problem was that the farm had become a straight line. Money went out for fuel. Money went out for herbicide. Money went out for fertilizer. Money went out for insect control. Money went out for repairs on machines bought to reduce labor, and none of those expenses fed another part of the place. By 1980, the arithmetic had turned ugly. Diesel cost more, fertilizer cost more, interest cost more. A wet spring delayed planting, then a hot spell hardened the upper soil. Grass broke through in the thin places. Snails gathered in shallow edges. Grasshoppers worked the levees. A late flush of weeds forced Clara to make another pass with the spray rig. The rice still came up. From the road, the field looked green and full. But Clara knew how much money was standing in each row. She knew the crop had borrowed against itself before the first head formed. That summer, an extension agent named Paul Lejeune walked the property with her. He was not careless. He was not arrogant. His recommendations were practical. Replace 2 worn spray nozzles. Regrade the south paddy. Increase nitrogen in the pale sections. Use a different herbicide rotation. Repair the pump before it failed under full load. Treat the snails along the lower edge. Clean the drainage ditch. Each recommendation made sense. Together, they cost more than Clara had. Paul told her the farm might be too small to carry the equipment it needed. He suggested leasing the rice ground to a larger operator. Clara thanked him. Then she carried his typed list into the house, placed it beside Samuel's old ledger, and stared at the 2 pages until the afternoon light disappeared. That night, she added the numbers 3 times. The answer did not change. If the next season looked like the last one, she could keep the land only by borrowing more money against it. Clara slept badly. At sunrise, she walked the south levee. That was when she noticed the first clue. A flock of wild ducks had been using a shallow corner where the water lingered after the rest of the field drained. They had trampled the mud into a soft, uneven skin. They had eaten the spilled rice. They had pulled at tender grass. They had broken open snail clusters along the edge. Their droppings dotted the waterline. Clara almost walked past. Wild ducks were ordinary. That was exactly why the pattern mattered. The patch they had worked looked different from the ground around it. There were fewer grass seed heads. Less decaying residue had gathered in the corner. The mud was loose instead of crusted. The snail clusters were thinner. She crouched, pressed 2 fingers into the soil, and remembered her father. What is the next use? For the next several weeks, Clara watched that corner. She did not decide the ducks were magic. She decided they were evidence. At the public library, she read old agricultural bulletins about geese used for weeding cotton and poultry, turned into orchards after harvest. She found a short article describing farmers overseas who used ducks in established rice. She wrote to 2 university departments and received 3 envelopes in return. One contained a warning. Ducks could destroy young rice if released too early. They could muddy banks. They could crowd water points. They could concentrate manure. They could carry disease. They could become prey. The second envelope contained almost no useful detail. The third described the basic logic Clara needed. Once rice was firmly rooted, managed waterfowl could eat weed shoots, insects, snails, and volunteer grain while returning manure to the field. The word Clara underlined was not ducks. It was managed. She did not need birds wandering through her crop. She needed a moving crew, a crew with a schedule, a crew with boundaries, a crew that could be removed before the field paid for one solution by creating another problem. So Clara began with the system. She divided the 32 rice acres into 8 working sections using existing levees and temporary wire. She built 2 low-night shelters from cypress boards, taken off an abandoned crawfish shed. Each shelter sat on skids so a tractor could drag it along the levee. She covered the lower openings with welded wire after a neighbor reminded her what raccoons could do. She repaired an old livestock tank and fitted it with a float valve. She made lightweight gate panels from conduit and fence mesh. She trained herself to think in days, not fields. 3 days in one section, 2 in another if the ground was wet, longer after harvest, shorter while rice was growing. She marked the release windows on a calendar. No birds near newly planted rice. No birds after grain heads began to soften. No flock left in one corner long enough to strip the bank. The ducks would enter when the plants were rooted and strong. They would work during daylight. At dusk, Clara would call them back with grain shaken in a metal pail. Only after all of that was ready did she go looking for birds. That was how she ended up at the auction in the spring of 1981. The man who laughed thought he was watching a widow make an emotional purchase. He did not know she had already built the gates. He did not know the shelters were waiting on the levee. He did not know a map of 8 sections hung beside her kitchen table. The ducks were not the idea. They were the missing part. Bringing them home took 3 borrowed trailers and most of the afternoon. The birds came out of the crates stiff and confused. They clustered near the shelter, quacking at the open sky. Clara kept them off the rice for 10 days. She taught them the sound of the grain pail. She taught them where water waited. She taught them that the low cypress shelters meant safety after dark. On the 11th morning, she opened the first gate. At first, the ducks moved as one nervous mass. Then one bird pushed its bill into a patch of young grass. Another found a line of snails along the water edge. Within minutes, the flock spread across the shallow paddy. They pulled, they pecked, they stirred the surface. They chased insects through the stems. Clara stood on the levee with a notebook. She was not watching for beauty. She was watching for damage. The first season punished every weak part of her plan. In the second week, she opened a section too early. The rice looked rooted from the levee, but the lowest rows were not. The ducks loosened several yards of seedlings before Clara moved them out. In another section, she placed the water tank too close to a gate. The flock gathered there until the bank turned to soup. 9 birds disappeared in one night when a fox dug beneath the shelter wall. A thunderstorm knocked down 40 feet of temporary fence and sent ducks wandering into a drainage ditch. For 2 hours, Clara waded through knee-deep water, driving them back with a broom handle. The neighbor who had laughed at the auction drove past during the worst of it. He slowed his truck. Clara knew he saw her. She kept working. By midsummer, the system was changing. She raised the shelter skirts. She buried wire at the corners. She moved the water every day. She released the flock later in weak sections. She scattered a little grain where the ducks were ignoring weed pressure. She shortened the rotation after rain. Most important, she stopped judging success by how busy the birds looked. She judged the field. Were roots exposed? Was the bank holding? Were weeds setting seed? Were snail clusters returning? Was manure accumulating? Did the plants look stressed? The ducks became useful only when Clara became precise. That first crop did not turn into a miracle. She still sprayed. She still bought fertilizer. She still lost rice to weeds. But she skipped one herbicide pass across several sections. She used less hand labor along the levees. The worst snail pockets did not return at the same strength. After harvest, the ducks cleaned spilled grain that would have fed rodents and volunteer plants. Then they worked the residue while Clara rotated them through the stubble. The change was not dramatic enough to impress anyone driving by. It was dramatic enough to change the ledger. The birds also began laying again. Not like young commercial ducks, not every day. But fresh air, forage, and less crowding brought many of them back into production. Clara collected the eggs in a wire basket. She sold them to 2 restaurants in Lafayette, then to a bakery that liked the richer yolks. By August, Egg Money was paying for most of the grain she used to train and supplement the flock. That was the turn. The ducks were reducing field costs while covering much of their own feed. The labor was no longer an expense standing alone. The circle had begun to close. In 1982, Clara changed the rotation. She waited until the rice had stronger roots. She ran smaller groups through wetter sections. She used the full flock only after harvest. She recorded fuel hours, chemical purchases, and repair time beside egg sales. The numbers were not spectacular. They were better than spectacular. They were repeatable. 1 fewer pass across a field meant less diesel, less chemical, less wear on the sprayer, and 1 less afternoon when a mechanical failure could stop the season. A weed eaten before it seeded meant fewer weeds later. Spilled grain eaten after harvest meant less volunteer growth and fewer rodents. Manure dropped across a paddy did not replace all fertilizer. It reduced what the soil had to ask for next. By the third year, Clara bought less herbicide. She burned less fuel. She cut fewer levee weeds. She had fewer emergency repairs because the spray rig was not working as often. The ducks laid eggs. A few hatched young. Older birds were sold for meat. The shelters were bedded with rice straw. The used bedding returned to the field edges that needed organic matter. Nothing was doing everything. Everything was doing more than one thing. That distinction kept the farm alive. The early 1980s were hard across rural Louisiana. Interest rates climbed. Land payments tightened. Rice prices moved without mercy. Farmers who had expanded with borrowed money discovered that high production did not guarantee survival. The larger farm east of Clara belonged to a man named Ellis Guidry. Ellis had more acres, a newer combine, and a cab tractor with air conditioning. He had laughed at the duck auction. Not cruelly, he thought Clara was trying to avoid reality. For several seasons, Ellis harvested more rice than she did. He also carried more debt. When his pump failed, he borrowed for a new one. When grain prices weakened, he borrowed to plant again. When a tropical storm flattened part of his crop, the bank extended one note and tightened another. Ellis was not a bad farmer. He understood yield. Clara understood leakage. In 1985, Ellis put 22 acres up for sale. The land bordered Clara's south paddy. At the auction, a regional operator opened the bidding. Clara answered. The price rose slowly. She did not look at Ellis. She looked at the paper in front of her, where she had written the highest number she could pay without borrowing. When the bid reached that line, the regional operator hesitated, then stopped. Sold to Clara Mercer. She paid from savings. No new machinery note, no meeting at the bank, no land pledged against the purchase. The money had not come from one great harvest. It had accumulated in small absences. Diesel she had not burned, chemicals she had not sprayed, repairs she had not needed. Feed the eggs had paid for. Weeds that never reached seed. Field work that did not require another hired hand. A farm can look unchanged while its future is being rewritten in the expenses no longer appearing. Ellis found Clara outside the building. For a moment neither spoke. Then he looked at the truck bed. 2 empty egg crates sat beside a coil of temporary fence. I thought those ducks were supposed to save you money, he said. Clara nodded. They did. Ellis glanced back toward the auction room. You just bought 22 acres. Clara folded the bid sheet. Saving money is what made the purchase. That was when the story changed. For 4 years, people had told it as a joke about a widow who bought worn-out ducks to weed rice. After the land sale, they told it as a story about someone who saw value where everyone else saw waste. Clara did not like that version much better. It made the ducks sound like a secret. There was no secret. The birds did not eliminate herbicide. They did not replace fertilizer. They did not guarantee a crop. They did not work without fencing, timing, shelter, water, feed, and constant observation. Unmanaged ducks could ruin a field. Managed ducks could connect its problems. Weeds became feed. Insects became feed. Snails became feed. Spilled grain became feed. Rice straw became bedding. Bedding became soil matter. Eggs paid for grain. Lower field costs built savings. Savings protected the land. The power was not in any single step. The power was in the circle. Clara farmed through the rest of the decade. She replaced the original flock gradually. She kept birds longer than commercial producers thought sensible. A duck did not have to be an efficient egg machine to earn its place. If it could forage, stir shallow water, clear weed shoots, eat spilled grain, spread manure, and lay an occasional egg, it still had work. Her granddaughter, Elise, began spending summers on the farm in the 1990s. Elise hated the duck gates. She hated the mud that pulled at her boots. She hated calling birds home in the rain. She especially hated the old drakes that waited until a gate was almost closed before running the wrong way. Clara taught her the system one section at a time. Do not count ducks first. Count damage. Look at roots. Look at banks. Look at seed heads. Look at droppings. Look at the water line. Move the flock before the field begins paying for their presence. One evening, Elise watched the ducks work through a harvested paddy. So they're weed control, she said. One job, Clara answered. Pest control, another. Fertilizer, partly. Egg business, Clara smiled. That helps. Elise frowned at the flock. Then what are they? Clara shook the grain pail, and the ducks turned toward her in a rolling wave. They're ducks, she said. The useful thing is the arrangement. By the time Elise returned to the farm full-time, the place looked different. The old spray rig had been sold. The cypress shelters had been rebuilt twice. Some of the original acreage had shifted into crawfish rotation. Clara's 22 purchased acres were fully integrated into the duck schedule. The farm earned money from rice, duck eggs, seasonal birds, crawfish, and small field tours for agricultural groups. But the main gain was still hard to photograph. The soil along the worked edges held more organic matter. Volunteer rice was easier to control. Some weed pressure had fallen. The levees required less mowing. The farm used purchased inputs more carefully because Clara no longer treated them as the only answer. A university class visited in 2001. One student asked how much money the ducks had made over 20 years. Clara gave him the numbers she knew. Egg sales, bird sales, feed, shelter, repairs, fence replacement. Then she pointed toward the equipment shed. What did that sprayer cost me after I stopped replacing it? The student looked confused. She pointed toward the fuel tank. How do you count diesel I never bought? Then toward the field. How do you count weeds that never seeded, repairs that never happened, or interest I never paid because I did not need another loan? The student lowered his notebook. Clara was not avoiding the question. She was explaining why the question was too small. The ducks had made money. More important, they had changed what the farm required in order to function. That difference had compounded through ordinary years. Not one miracle season. Not one record harvest. 20 seasons of smaller leaks. 20 seasons of a little more money staying home. Before the class left, Clara walked them to the south corner where she had first watched the wild ducks. The spot no longer looked unusual. That was the point. The pattern had spread into the whole operation. She told them most people see a strange patch and call it an exception. A farmer has to decide whether it is an exception or evidence. Clara's gift was not that she loved ducks. It was not that she rejected modern farming. It was not that she found a trick nobody else could copy. She noticed a working relationship. Then she built boundaries strong enough to make that relationship dependable. At the auction, everyone else measured those birds by one number, eggs per day. By that measure, the flock was almost worthless. Clara measured something else: bills removed, labor replaced, waste consumed, soil returned, risk reduced, options preserved. In a crowded barn, the ducks had reached the end of their value. In a managed rice field, they began a different kind of life. The birds had not changed. Clara had simply closed the circle.